Hi lang. Big fan. Once I possessed the kung fu of every master villain.
Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
Poe's journey from the wide-eyed, dumpling-loving dragon warrior to a respected spiritual leader in Kung Fu Panda 4 is one of the most profound character evolutions in modern animated cinema, representing not only his personal growth, but also a broader theme of what it truly means to embrace change, responsibility, and legacy. In the beginning of his saga, Poe was introduced to audiences as an unlikely hero, a clumsy panda who dreamed big but was weighed down by self-doubt, awkwardness, and an overwhelming love for food. He was far from the image of a kung fu master that people expected. Yet, fate chose him as the Dragon Warrior, a title that symbolized not only power, but also destiny. Across the first 3 films, audiences watched as Poe stumbled, learned, failed, and eventually rose to the challenge, proving that greatness doesn't come from physical perfection or natural talent, but from determination, resilience, and the courage to embrace one's authentic self. By the time Kung Fu Panda 4 arrives, Poe has mastered not only the art of combat, but also the art of believing in himself. And the movie explores his next great challenge, stepping beyond the role of warrior and into the shoes of a teacher, a mentor, and ultimately, a spiritual figure who must pass on his wisdom to the next generation. The transformation of Poe into a spiritual leader is not something that happens overnight. Rather, it is the culmination of every trial, every friendship, and every battle he has fought. In Kung Fu Panda 4, the narrative forces him to recognize that being a dragon warrior is not just about saving the Valley of Peace or defeating villains. It is about preserving a tradition, guiding others toward their potential, and ensuring that the values of Kung Fu endure beyond his own lifetime. This realization is not easy for Poe. Much of the film focuses on his internal struggle with letting go of his identity as the singular protector, and instead embracing the uncomfortable but necessary role of mentorship. He must prepare to pass the mantle of Dragon Warrior to someone else, a concept that challenges the very foundation of his self-worth. Poe has always defined himself by this title, and now he must discover that his true worth lies not in what he does for himself, but in what he inspires in others. This internal battle, to let go of control while embracing legacy, is one of the richest themes in the entire franchise. As Poe navigates this transition, audiences see him wrestle with vulnerability in new ways. Previously, his fears were about acceptance. Would others believe in him? Would he ever truly be enough? Now, his fear lies in the idea of letting go. Can he trust someone else to carry on the legacy he has worked so hard to build? Can he accept that his journey as the Dragon Warrior is part of something bigger than himself? Kung Fu Panda 4 cleverly balances these questions with the humor and heart that fans have come to love, showing Po's clumsy, comedic side as he attempts to train, guide, and sometimes micromanage those he hopes to mentor. His leadership is not flawless. He makes mistakes, doubts himself, and even tries too hard at times. But that is exactly what makes his journey so authentic and relatable. Audiences can see themselves in his struggle, because the transition from doing to leading is one of the hardest lessons in life. Another critical element in Po's evolution is the role of Master Shifu. Shifu has always been a guiding figure, challenging Po to dig deeper into himself, to face his fears, and to embrace the truth that strength comes from within. In Kung Fu Panda 4, their relationship takes on a new dimension as Shifu becomes less of a direct teacher and more of a mirror for Po's own challenges. The wisdom Shifu once offered now becomes the wisdom Po must embody and pass on. This generational shift underscores the cyclical nature of knowledge. What was once learned must eventually be taught, and every student, no matter how unlikely, carries within them the potential to become a master. For Po, this is the essence of spiritual leadership, realizing that true power lies not in hoarding knowledge or victories, but in sharing them, ensuring that the flame of Kung Fu burns brighter in the hearts of future warriors. The film also dives into Po's dual heritage, particularly his relationships with his two fathers, Li Shan and Mr. Ping. These relationships emphasize that leadership is not just about martial arts, but about community Po's combat style in Kung Fu Panda. 4 reflects a long and layered evolution, shaped by his past battles. Mentors, emotional growth, and sense of responsibility. And, while he began his journey as an uncoordinated, overeager panda relying mostly on luck, enthusiasm, and improvisation, his fighting abilities in the 4th installment showcase precision, conscious adaptation, and a fusion of traditional Kung Fu with his uniquely personal flair. Instead of merely reacting to danger or stumbling into success as he often did in the first movie, he now anticipates threats, reads opponents with keen awareness, and deploys techniques with deliberate intent, which shows a maturity that blends strength with spiritual grounding. His movements have become smoother, more economical, and more balanced, drawing heavily from the teachings of Master Shifu and the lessons learned from previous villains like Tai Lung, Shen, and Kai. But what stands out is that Po no longer imitates styles. He integrates them into something entirely his own. In Kung Fu Panda 4, Po incorporates not only the fluidity of traditional forms, but also pragmatic responses shaped by his experiences as the Dragon Warrior, which means he can shift mid-battle from powerful panda-based strikes to elegant crane-like evasions, from tiger-inspired aggression to mantis-style quick precision. His inner strength also plays a larger role. Where earlier he needed external validation or emotional reassurance before engaging in major battles, he now carries an inner stillness that gives clarity, and this has made his combat approach more grounded. He doesn't thrash wildly when under pressure. Instead, he pauses internally, reconnects with intention, and then moves forward with a blend of confidence and calm that unsettles enemies, who expect the clumsy warrior from his beginnings. Another major development in his combat style is the way he uses his body weight and natural panda attributes as advantages rather than obstacles. In previous films, jokes were often made about his size, but now his center of gravity enables him to anchor, parry heavy blows, and deliver grounded attacks that send even powerful enemies off balance. His agility has also improved, not in a way that makes him unnaturally fast, but in a way that shows he has trained his reflexes and learned how to redirect momentum rather than fight against it. One of the most significant elements in his transformation is his breathing control. He no longer huffs through battles or wastes energy on unnecessary movements, and that gives him endurance through prolonged confrontations. Emotionally, his fighting is no longer only about defeating the enemy. It reflects his desire to protect others, mentor emerging talent, and resolve conflict without arrogance. His sense of duty as a guardian of peace influences the way he fights. He is firm without cruelty, powerful without losing empathy, and strategic rather than chaotic. In Kung Fu Panda 4, when facing new adversaries, Po uses observation before engagement, which marks a shift from his earlier impulsive reactions. He reads footwork, studies enemy rhythm, and waits for the right opening, showing restraint that stems from trust in his abilities rather than fear or hesitation. He also channels inner strength gained from personal identity acceptance. Earlier, Po struggled with doubts about belonging in the Kung Fu world, grappling with questions of heritage and skill. But now that he has embraced himself as both panda and warrior, his combat style is fully integrated with his personality and confidence. His past teachers left deep marks. Shifu taught discipline and focus. Tigress taught power and stance. Crane taught fluid evasion. Viper taught flexibility and subtlety. And Mantis taught timing and precision. Instead of compartmentalizing these lessons, Po merges them seamlessly, which allows him to transition between combat modes according to situational demands. His improvisation has also matured. He still has spontaneous creativity, but it operates within a framework of mastery rather than panic. If an opponent is larger or faster, Po adapts by using terrain, leveraging objects around him, or adjusting his stance to create unexpected counterattacks. Spiritually, his inner strength is enhanced by a deeper connection to Qi. But unlike Kung Fu Panda 3, where Qi was a newfound power he was still understanding, in the fourth film, it acts as a stable reinforcement rather than a surprise element. He doesn't flaunt Qi or rely on it as a shortcut. He channels it quietly to reinforce strikes, stay grounded, or support others in the midst of danger. This balance between physical skill and inner harmony makes his fighting style appear calmer, yet more unstoppable. His emotional intelligence also affects his approach. Instead of mocking enemies or becoming angry, he maintains composure and even attempts to understand their motivations, which helps him exploit psychological weaknesses rather than only physical ones. The growth of his leadership role influences how he fights in groups. Po no longer charges in alone, but coordinates with allies, directs formations, and steps in strategically to shift the tide. His voice of authority during battle helps team members remain stable, and his movements become anchors around which others synchronize. At the same time, he hasn't lost the playful charm that defines his personality. Occasionally, he still uses humor mid-battle to throw opponents off guard, but it's controlled humor aimed at distracting the enemy while keeping himself relaxed. He knows that tension can stiffen the body and weaken performance, so lightness is both a mental and tactical asset. Yet, when stakes are high, or someone he cares about is threatened, Po transitions into a fierce guardian mode, where his strikes become heavier, his posture lowers, and his eyes focus sharply, embodying both panda strength and warrior discipline. His growth is also visible in how he handles defeat or difficult situations. Rather than panicking, he recalibrates quickly, acknowledging what didn't work and shifting strategy in real time. This adaptability gives him an edge against unpredictable opponents. Weapons are still not his primary preference, but he has become capable of using staffs, ropes, and environment-based tools when needed, integrating them fluidly with hand-to-hand combat. His training with Shifu and observation of skilled warriors in previous films have given him insight into how different weapon users operate, so he can disarm or neutralize them more efficiently than before. Additionally, he has gained a deeper respect for non-combat resolution. And in Kung Fu Panda 4, he sometimes tries to end battles before they escalate by intimidating enemies through confidence and presence rather than brute force. His body language has shifted from wide-eyed excitement to a poised readiness, and even his stance reflects this change. Feet firmly planted, shoulders relaxed, eyes scanning rather than darting around. When he moves, there is less stumbling and more deliberate placement of limbs, as though every motion is guided by memory and instinct combined. He still uses his iconic belly style, like using weight to absorb hits or convert falls into rolls. But now, those actions look like chosen techniques rather than accidents. Over time, he has learned how to transfer force through his frame efficiently, turning himself into both shield and weapon. Po's combat evolution is rooted in self-acceptance. When he believed he needed to be like others, his style was fragmented, but once he embraced his own strengths and forgave his insecurities, his movements became unified. His inner strength now radiates in moments of silence as much as in the loud clashes of battle. Fear no longer clouds his judgment. Instead, he processes it and uses it to sharpen awareness. His growth is not shown as perfection, but as mastery over imperfection. He still trips occasionally, or miscalculates, but recovers instantly without losing composure. This realism makes his transformation inspiring, because it's not about becoming flawless, but about using every part of himself as an advantage. Ultimately, Po's fighting style in Kung Fu Panda 4 reflects a warrior who has traveled from chaos to clarity. His movements hold memory, his choices show wisdom, and his strength emerges from both body and heart. While he still embodies the spirit of a joyful panda who loves dumplings and laughter, his combat now reveals a leader who knows when to strike, when to step back, and when to guide others forward. Each punch, block, and leap tells the story of his journey. Not just a warrior shaped by battles, but a protector shaped by understanding. Po's growth in inner peace throughout Kung Fu Panda 4 is not presented as a sudden achievement or a mystical accident, but as an evolving internal journey shaped by experience, responsibility, emotional resilience, and a deeper understanding of his own identity. Unlike in earlier films where he struggled to balance his doubts with his destiny, this time his inner peace feels lived in, integrated into his daily actions, decisions, and reactions. It does not mean he is free of stress, fear, or concern. Rather, it means he has developed the ability to ground himself quickly in moments of chaos. When faced with threats or unexpected challenges, Po no longer spirals into confusion or panic. He breathes, pauses internally, and moves from a place of awareness rather than impulse. His inner peace is shown not through stillness alone, but through how calmly he adapts, how gently he guides others, and how firmly he holds on to what matters without clinging to control. He has learned that strength is not about overpowering every situation, but about responding with clarity. This mindset influences every aspect of his role as a warrior and emerging leader. His connection to inner peace is also strengthened by the relationships he has built and the way he now values balance over victory. In earlier times, Po sought approval and validation, chasing the idea of what a dragon warrior should look like. That insecurity created tension within him, making his peace fragile and easily shaken. But by the time Kung Fu Panda 4 unfolds, he has accepted both his flaws and strengths, understanding that peace is not about perfection. It is about presence. When the world expects him to act, he acts with intention rather than reaction. When others doubt him, he listens, evaluates, and then chooses confidently. His response to conflict is shaped not by ego, but by harmony. He fights only when necessary, and seeks to restore balance rather than dominate opponents. Even his humor, which once masked uncertainty, now flows from a relaxed and centered spirit. He can laugh in the face of adversity, not because he is careless, but because he trusts himself and the journey he has walked. Po's expanding responsibilities also play a role in the development of his inner peace. Being seen as more than just a warrior forces him to think beyond his own actions and consider the impact of his guidance on others. Knowing that people are looking to him for wisdom, not just strength, encourages him to cultivate patience, clarity, and emotional steadiness. This inner peace becomes visible in how he teaches, how he protects, and how he maintains hope even when circumstances become difficult. His ability to remain calm helps those around him feel safe and confident, and that in turn reinforces his stability. The weight of leadership could have caused pressure, but instead, it deepens his sense of inner grounding, because he no longer tries to control outcomes. He simply stays balanced within them. A key aspect of his inner peace is his relationship with Chi. Unlike in Kung Fu Panda 3, where Chi initially felt like a power he had to unlock or prove worthy of, in the fourth movie it becomes an extension of his inner calm. He doesn't force it or chase it. It flows naturally when he is aligned with himself. Chi enhances his focus, supports his movements, and strengthens his resolve, but he doesn't depend on it as a separate power. It's not something he uses to impress or intimidate. Instead, it supports the peace he already carries inside. His Chi no longer feels like a secret weapon, but like a quiet current, always present, amplifying his intentions. Another layer to his inner peace lies in how he responds to emotional tension. Instead of deflecting or suppressing uncomfortable feelings, he acknowledges them without letting them rule him. If he feels fear, he recognizes it without being paralyzed. If he feels sadness, he allows it to pass through instead of denying it. This acceptance loosens the grip of negative emotions and allows him to regain mental clarity quickly. Inner peace for Po does not mean he never loses his composure. It means he recovers faster, with perspective and compassion. His connection to his adoptive father, Mr. Ping, and his biological father, Li Shan, also shapes this inner balance. Where earlier these relationships caused confusion and divided loyalty, now they provide grounding and emotional support. He draws peace from knowing he is loved not for his title or achievements, but for who he is at his core. This security diminishes the inner conflict that once made him feel like an outsider in his own story. With his identity no longer under question, his peace has room to deepen into certainty. Importantly, Po's inner peace strengthens his empathy, allowing him to understand enemies and allies more deeply. Instead of viewing villains as obstacles to destroy, he recognizes the fear, anger, or pain that drives them. This doesn't make him naive or overly forgiving. It makes him strategic and compassionate at the same time. He can disarm opponents not only with force, but with insight, and that is a mark of evolved inner power. His peace becomes a shield against manipulation and aggression because he doesn't react to provocation the way he once might have. Inner peace also influences his physicality. His movements become refined, his breathing controlled, his strikes calculated. Battles do not drain him as quickly because he is not fighting with tension. His body follows his mind, and his mind follows his center. Even when faced with danger that once would have rattled him, he stands his ground with quiet conviction. This calmness unsettles adversaries who expect either fear or arrogance. But Po offers neither. He meets them with stillness, a quality more powerful than brute force. Perhaps the most meaningful proof of his inner peace is that he no longer fears the future. Whether he continues as the Dragon Warrior, becomes a mentor, or passes the mantle to another, he accepts his path with openness. He doesn't cling to titles or fear change. This lack of attachment frees him from anxiety and keeps him responsive to the needs of the moment. He trusts the flow of events without surrendering his agency, creating a harmony between choice and destiny. Po's relationship with Master Shifu in Kung Fu Panda 4 reflects years of growth, mutual respect, emotional evolution, and a shift from strict mentorship to deep spiritual partnership. In the earliest stages of their journey, Shifu saw Po as an unworthy, accidental choice for the role of Dragon Warrior, a clumsy, overeager panda with no training, no lineage, and no discipline. Po, in turn, viewed Shifu as an intimidating figure whose approval he desperately wanted but could not easily earn. Their dynamic was full of tension, doubt, miscommunication, and resistance. But across the films, that friction transformed into understanding as each learned from the other. By the time the fourth installment unfolds, the connection between them has matured into something far more balanced and profound. Shifu is no longer merely Po's master. He is his guide, confidant, advisor, and at times student in his own way. Po doesn't rely on Shifu's approval to validate his identity anymore. And Shifu no longer sees Po as someone to mold from scratch, but as someone whose unique strengths have reshaped what being a Dragon Warrior means. One of the most important aspects of their relationship now is trust. Shifu fully trusts Po's instincts, decisions, and abilities in a way that would have been unthinkable in the first film. Instead of commanding Po or questioning his readiness, Shifu gives him space to lead, to make choices, and even to teach others. His guidance is now subtle, offered through wisdom rather than pressure. When Po faces the burden of leadership or spiritual responsibility, Shifu is there not to instruct every move, but to remind him of what he already holds within himself. Their conversations in Kung Fu Panda 4 carry less frustration and more reflection. Shifu speaks less in orders and more in quiet teachings, understanding that Po's growth has come not from force, but from encouragement and belief. Po's confidence in Shifu has also deepened, but in a new way. In earlier times, he sought Shifu's validation. Now he seeks his perspective. He doesn't obey out of fear or awe. He listens out of respect and love. He can disagree without tension and ask questions without embarrassment. Their communication has softened with mutual understanding. Shifu, who was once emotionally closed off due to past trauma with Tai Lung and Lord Shen, now allows himself to feel pride, affection, and vulnerability around Po. Po has healed something in Shifu that no traditional warrior could. He reminded him what it means to believe again, to accept the unexpected, and to grow alongside a student. Their roles have evolved in subtle but meaningful ways. Shifu's guiding presence is still significant, but he now stands slightly behind Po rather than above him. When major threats emerge, Shifu observes Po's decisions and steps in only when balance is needed. He respects Po's intuition, especially after watching how Po has handled impossible enemies through courage, creativity, and empathy. Shifu recognizes that Po's strength does not come from conventional training, but from the harmony between his heart and his purpose. Rather than suppressing Po's personality, Shifu now sees it as an asset to the world of Kung Fu. Another key layer in their relationship is the emotional mirroring that has developed. Shifu once carried the burden of mentorship with resentment and guilt, feeling responsible for his students' failures. Po, on the other hand, brings a lighter, accepting approach that Shifu has started to absorb. Their energy balances. Po softens Shifu, and Shifu sharpens Po. In Kung Fu Panda 4, their scenes together reflect quiet moments of insight rather than intense moments of discipline. Shifu doesn't scold Po for mistakes. He helps him reflect on them. Po doesn't hide his doubts from Shifu. He voices them comfortably, knowing Shifu will respond with clarity instead of criticism. Their growth is also evident in how they handle silence. Where earlier silence between them was tense or loaded with disappointment, now it is comfortable, reflective, and full of unspoken understanding. A single glance or phrase between them can carry the weight of years of learning. Shifu no longer expects Po to replicate traditional Kung Fu ideals. Instead, he sees Po as the evolution of those ideals. And Po no longer tries to fit into an image of worthiness. He lives it. Spiritually, their connection reaches a new height. Shifu once taught Po about inner peace, chi, and the discipline of focus. Now he witnesses Po embodying those teachings in action. There's a quiet pride in how Shifu watches Po guide others, protect the Valley of Peace, and integrate emotional balance into combat and leadership. Shifu's pride is no longer hidden or hesitant. It is visible in how he speaks about Po to others, and how he supports him without overshadowing him. He acknowledges Po's strength not as luck, but as destiny shaped through perseverance and heart. At the same time, Shifu continues to offer grounding and perspective when Po feels overwhelmed by expectations. Rather than berating him, Shifu reminds him of how far he has come, allowing Po to draw strength from memory rather than pressure. Their connection resembles that of father and son in emotional texture, not through obligation, but through choice and mutual growth. Shifu has learned to let go of the need to control, and Po has learned to lead without forgetting where he came from. Their dynamic also reflects mutual learning. Po has absorbed Shifu's patience, clarity, and strategic thinking. Shifu, in turn, has adopted Po's openness, spontaneity, and acceptance. This exchange has created harmony. Where Po once mirrored Shifu's doubts, he now mirrors his wisdom, and Shifu mirrors Po's hope. They do not compete with one another. They complete one another's lessons. Ultimately, in Kung Fu Panda 4, Po and Shifu's relationship is a living symbol of growth through humility, acceptance, and shared destiny. They no longer walk the path of master and student. They walk it side by side, one as the spirit of guidance and the other as the living embodiment of transformation. Their bond is not defined by hierarchy, but by the legacy they are building together, one that honors the past while evolving beyond it. Po's acceptance of responsibility and leadership in Kung Fu Panda 4 marks one of the most significant transformations in his character, showing how far he has come from the uncertain, food-loving noodle shop worker who stumbled into destiny. In earlier films, Po struggled to believe he was worthy of being the Dragon Warrior and often relied on luck, external encouragement, or the support of his friends to get through major challenges. But by the time the fourth installment unfolds, his sense of responsibility has matured into something steady, thoughtful, and deeply internalized. He doesn't carry the title of Dragon Warrior as a form of pride or insecurity. He carries it as a commitment to protect others, uphold peace, and pass on what he has learned. Leadership for him is no longer about proving himself. It is about guiding, inspiring, and sometimes stepping back so others can grow. This shift in mindset colors everything he does, from how he engages in battle to how he interacts with allies and responds to rising threats. One of the most distinguishing features of Po's leadership now is how he balances humility with confidence. He does not see himself as above others, yet he does not doubt his ability to act when needed. When danger emerges, he assesses the situation with clarity, instead of panicking or rushing blindly into action. He considers the safety of others before making decisions, understanding that leadership involves accountability, not just bravery. His tone when speaking to allies reflects this change. He no longer tries to sound impressive or overcompensate for uncertainty, but instead speaks with a natural authority shaped by experience and empathy. Even when he is unsure of the outcome, he doesn't let fear drive him. He focuses on what needs to be done and how his strengths can serve the moment. Another sign of his acceptance of leadership is his evolving relationship with mentorship. In earlier chapters of his journey, Po was primarily the student, trying to keep up with Shifu's expectations and the legacy of the Furious Five. But in Kung Fu Panda 4, he steps into a mentor role himself, consciously guiding others who look to him for direction. This transition is not portrayed as a loss of identity, but as a fulfillment of it. His past struggles now serve as lessons he can pass on, rather than wounds he needs to hide. When younger or less experienced fighters look to him, he does not act superior. He teaches through encouragement, demonstrating techniques, storytelling, and emotional insight. He also gives others room to make mistakes, just as he was allowed to grow through his own imperfections. His leadership is rooted not in command, but in example. Responsibility has also shaped his emotional landscape. Earlier, Po was prone to moments of self-doubt and fear of failure, especially when faced with villains who seemed stronger or more experienced. But now, responsibility empowers rather than frightens him. When challenges arise, he doesn't view them as tests of his worth, but as part of the duty he has accepted. This mindset gives him resilience in the face of conflict. He can absorb setbacks without spiraling into despair, because leadership has taught him that obstacles don't define failure unless one stops trying. His calm under pressure reassures those around him, and even when he jokes or lightens the mood, there is a visible steadiness beneath his humor. A major part of Po's evolution is how he understands the weight of decisions. Instead of relying on impulsiveness or chance, he thinks strategically. He recognizes that every action has consequences that ripple beyond the moment, affecting allies, villages, and even the legacy of Kung Fu. This awareness doesn't make him hesitant. It makes him deliberate. Whether he is choosing when to fight, how to approach a negotiation, or where to place his trust, he acts with intention. His instincts have become sharper, not because he stopped being himself, but because he has learned from every success and failure. Where he once looked to Shifu or the Furious Five for direction, now others naturally look to him. Leadership also influences how Po faces fear. He understands that being brave does not mean being fearless. It means acting in spite of fear because others depend on him. In Kung Fu Panda 4, when new or powerful enemies emerge, he doesn't retreat into self-doubt or comedic deflection. Instead, he confronts the situation with a mix of courage and reflection, integrating his emotional growth with his fighting abilities. His responsibility to his community, friends, and the legacy of Kung Fu becomes a steady force within him. Rather than seeing leadership as a burden, he sees it as an honor that comes with purpose. Po's humor, once a coping mechanism for insecurity, has become a tool for connection. He uses it to keep morale high, calm nervous allies, or disarm tension in difficult situations. But he no longer hides behind it. When the moment calls for seriousness, he doesn't shy away or pretend not to care. He speaks openly about danger, loss, or sacrifice when necessary, and his honesty strengthens trust within his circle. His ability to balance lightness with responsibility makes his leadership unique. He leads not through intimidation or perfection, but through authenticity. His role as a protector is another core part of his growth. When the Valley of Peace or those he cares about are threatened, he acts not out of ego, but out of duty. Even when he struggles with internal worries, he puts the well-being of others first. This protective instinct is not reckless. It is guided by wisdom. He knows when to step forward alone and when to involve his allies. He understands that leadership does not mean doing everything, but ensuring everything is done well. There are moments when he must trust others to handle parts of the mission, and he does so without insecurity or reluctance. Po has also embraced the idea that leadership includes legacy. He recognizes that there will come a time when someone else will take up his mantle, and this does not frighten him. It motivates him to teach, prepare, and preserve the values he embodies. He sees himself as part of an ongoing story rather than the final act. This perspective frees him from the fear of losing status, allowing him to focus on what truly matters: harmony, balance, and the continuation of Kung Fu as a force for good. Ultimately, Po's acceptance of responsibility and leadership in Kung Fu Panda 4 is not defined by power or authority, but by care, wisdom, and inner strength. He no longer questions if he deserves his role. He lives it fully, leading with heart and humility. His journey from accidental warrior to intentional leader is not just a character arc. It is the soul of the story, showing how true leadership grows from service, self-belief, and the courage to guide others while still learning along the way. Poe's dynamic with the Furious Five has always been one of admiration, growth, and unexpected leadership. In the earlier films, Po saw them as legendary warriors far above his level. Now, in Kung Fu Panda 4, his position as the Dragon Warrior and future spiritual leader creates a new balance in their relationships. Each member of the Furious Five influences Po differently, emotionally, strategically, and morally, and Po's evolution reshapes how they function as a team. Tigress remains the most prominent bond among the five. Their relationship has shifted from skepticism to mutual trust and respect. Po's goofiness once bothered Tigress, but his courage and victories have proven his worth. In the new era, Tigress sees Po not only as a teammate, but as someone capable of carrying the legacy of Kung Fu forward. She still challenges him through silence and strength, but now her challenges are rooted in belief rather than criticism. Po, in turn, draws confidence from Tigress's presence, often watching her reactions to gauge decisions. Their quiet understanding creates a strong backbone for the group. Monkey's connection with Po has remained playful and loyal. Monkey has always been the easiest of the five to vibe with Po's humor and optimism. Their bond has grown from surface-level camaraderie to reliable teamwork built on instinct. In the new stage of their journey, Monkey steps into a role that helps Po stay grounded. When leadership responsibilities weigh heavy on Po, Monkey is the one who reminds him not to lose his joy, reminding him that laughter and strength can coexist. Po trusts Monkey to handle unexpected situations with both agility and emotional sensitivity. Viper's relationship with Po is subtle but essential. She understands vulnerability more deeply than the others, and often sees the emotional strain of Po's responsibilities. As Po moves toward a leadership role beyond combat, Viper becomes a quiet advisor who supports his decisions without overshadowing him. She respects the way Po leads through connection, rather than intimidation. Their bond highlights how empathy plays into teamwork and leadership. Viper represents the heart of the Furious Five, and Po draws inspiration from her balance of grace and strength. Mantis offers a different kind of support. His small size and bold personality mirror Po's unlikely origin as Dragon Warrior. Mantis respects Po's skills, but does not hesitate to tease him or call out mistakes. This honesty is something Po values, especially as he rises into a role traditionally held by wise and serious masters. Mantis reminds Po that perfection isn't the goal, impact is. Their bond grows stronger, as Po realizes that leadership doesn't mean losing authenticity. Crane has always been calm and strategic, and his relationship with Po reflects that. While Crane doesn't express emotion as directly as the others, he acknowledges Po's growth with subtle confidence. Crane respects Po's ability to inspire others, and understands that his leadership style is different from the traditional mold. Their bond shows the evolution of trust. Crane no longer questions Po's decisions, and instead follows his lead with steady assurance. As Po moves into a new chapter, one of the biggest shifts is how the Furious Five react to his spiritual destiny. They no longer see him as just their teammate. They recognize him as someone who will eventually take on an even higher mantle. Each member deals with that shift differently. Tigress becomes more protective of the legacy. Monkey becomes more supportive of Po as a friend. Viper respects his emotional burden. Mantis lightens the weight with humor. And Crane adapts with quiet loyalty. Their training sessions change as well. Po incorporates lessons from Master Shifu and his own experiences, blending discipline with creativity. The Furious Five start to follow Po's hybrid approach, trusting his instincts even when they are unconventional. This marks a major transformation from the early films where Po was the one trying to catch up to their standards. In battles, their coordination reaches new heights. Rather than relying solely on individual strengths, they now react to Po's cues. His leadership does not erase their individuality, but synchronizes it. They show confidence in his ability to handle both strategy and spirit, even as Po wrestles with the pressure of stepping beyond the battlefield one day. Another major part of Po's evolving relationship with the Furious Five is legacy. Po worries about what happens when he transitions to a non-warrior role. The Five reassure him not through speeches, but through their unwavering readiness to follow his vision. They reflect the lessons they have learned from him: courage without ego, purpose without fear. The absence of Master Shifu becomes a meaningful factor. Shifu steps back more in this stage of their journey, which allows Po and the Furious Five to solidify their own rhythm. While Po grew under Shifu's mentorship, His bond with the Furious Five proves what kind of leader he has become. They are no longer his idols, they are his partners. Emotionally, there's a deep acknowledgement that things are changing. Their adventures are not over, but evolution is inevitable. The Furious Five begin to see Po not only as the Dragon Warrior, but as the one chosen to carry Kung Fu's spiritual legacy. Their willingness to stand beside him through that transition shows the depth of their trust. By this era, the respect goes both ways completely. Po no longer feels like an outsider among warriors, and the Five no longer see him as the clumsy newcomer. They have built years of battles, lessons, failures, and victories together. Their connection is not just built on mission, it is built on belief. If the Furious Five represent strength, discipline, humor, empathy, and balance, then Po represents the force that ties those elements together. Their evolving relationships in Kung Fu Panda 4 reflect not only Po's growth, but also the collective transformation of the team. They are no longer five warriors and an unlikely hero. They are a legacy united by the Dragon Warrior, one who leads not by perfection, but by heart. Po's journey from an accidental warrior to a chosen spiritual successor marks one of the most profound evolutions in the Kung Fu Panda universe. In the beginning, Po was a fanboy who stumbled into destiny. Every challenge he faced, from training under Shifu to fighting Tai Lung, Shen, and Kai, was about proving he deserved the title of Dragon Warrior. But by the time Kung Fu Panda 4 approaches, his destiny begins to shift from learning Kung Fu to guiding its future. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. Po starts recognizing that his role is no longer limited to combat. He has absorbed teachings from Shifu, Oogway, his allies, and his own experiences. Being a spiritual leader doesn't mean abandoning his identity. It means becoming the bridge between tradition and evolution. Unlike the masters before him, Po's strength is rooted in emotional intelligence, improvisation, and the belief that anyone can rise to greatness, no matter their origin. One of the biggest signs of his transition is how others perceive him. The Valley of Peace no longer sees Po as a lucky warrior. They see him as a symbol of unity and hope. Villagers, young fighters, and even other masters look to him for guidance. The Furious Five trust his instincts, Master Shifu begins to step back, and the world around him prepares for the moment when he steps into Oogway's legacy. Internally, Po struggles with self-doubt. Spiritual leadership sounds distant and heavy, and he wonders if he's wise or serious enough to carry that title. His biggest fear is losing his authenticity, his humor, his love of food, and his relatable nature. But what sets Po apart is that he doesn't need to mimic Oogway or Shifu to lead. His spiritual power stems from empathy, acceptance, and resilience. A key part of this transition is mentorship. Just as Shifu once guided him, Po begins to mentor new warriors. He trains others not by enforcing rigid discipline, but by identifying their inner strengths. His leadership style is intuitive. He helps others believe in themselves the way no one initially believed in him. That ability to unlock potential is exactly what makes him worthy of becoming a spiritual leader. Shifu's changing behavior also reflects Po's rise. Shifu, once hypercritical, now observes Po with quiet respect. He corrects less and trusts more. This reversal in dynamic shows that Po has surpassed the role of student in Shifu's eyes. The lessons once taught to him are now being applied and passed forward. Po's emotional evolution across the Kung Fu Panda franchise is one of the most powerful and underrated aspects of his character arc. In the beginning, he was enthusiastic, insecure, awkward, and overwhelmed by the idea that he could ever be something more than a noodle shop worker with big dreams. But each challenge shaped him, not just physically or spiritually, but emotionally. By the time Kung Fu Panda 4 takes place, Po has matured into someone capable of deep reflection, responsibility, and emotional balance without losing the personality traits that make him lovable and relatable. His emotional growth begins with self-acceptance. In the first film, he constantly battles feelings of inadequacy. He idolizes the Furious Five and struggles to believe that he belongs among them. His desire to impress them often stems from insecurity rather than confidence. But once he learns to see value in who he already is, he stops trying to become someone else and starts embracing the strengths that come naturally to him. His creativity, resilience, compassion, and humor. Family plays a big role in his emotional evolution. His relationship with Mr. Ping, his adoptive goose father, begins with misunderstanding and distance, but grows into mutual respect and love. Later, when he discovers his biological father, Li Shan, Po must reconcile feelings of abandonment, excitement, and confusion. Instead of replacing one father with another, Po matures enough to accept both and build a bridge between them. This dual family dynamic teaches him emotional grounding and identity balance. Po's experience with loss and fear also contributes to his maturity. When facing Tai Lung, Shen, and Kai, he struggles with guilt, doubt, and the fear of not being strong enough. Earlier versions of Po would panic or give up, but the wiser version learns to pause, reflect, and adapt. This emotional composure comes from understanding that strength isn't about being fearless. It's about moving forward even when fear is present. His relationship with Master Shifu evolves dramatically. At first, Shifu is dismissive and frustrated by Po's lack of discipline. Over time, Po earns his respect not through perfection, but through perseverance and heart. Eventually, Shifu stops treating him like a student who needs constant correction and begins acknowledging him as a worthy successor. This transition gives Po emotional confidence without turning him arrogant. Po also grows in how he interacts with others. His leadership style becomes more thoughtful. Instead of waiting to be told what to do, Po considers the well-being of others and takes initiative. He listens more, mentors more, and learns to balance empathy with decision-making. His ability to encourage others, whether new warriors, children, or fellow pandas, shows his shift from being guided to guiding. Humor remains at the core of his personality, but it's no longer a mask for insecurity. Instead, Po uses humor to diffuse tension, connect with others, and inspire hope. His jokes don't come from nervousness, but from a place of confidence and ease. He no longer tries to earn approval. He naturally draws people in because he's secure in himself. Spiritually, his emotional growth is visible in how he handles destiny. Earlier, Po constantly questions whether he deserves the title of Dragon Warrior. Later, he understands that destiny isn't about worthiness. It's about calling and choice. His calm acceptance of his path prepares him not just to fight, but to lead. Even in intense situations, Po no longer spirals into doubt. He has learned to pause and reconnect with his inner peace. His encounters with Oogway's teachings remind him that clarity comes not through panic, but through presence. This emotional discipline separates him from his younger self. One of the most mature traits Po develops is the ability to balance vulnerability with strength. He openly admits what he doesn't know, and remains curious rather than defensive. This emotional honesty makes him relatable and trustworthy as a leader. Others follow him not because he appears invincible, but because he connects with them on a human level. His character evolution also involves understanding legacy. Instead of clinging to the title of Dragon Warrior for glory or identity, Po begins thinking about who will come after him. This shift from self-focus to generational impact marks an emotional transformation that mirrors his spiritual journey. In Kung Fu Panda 4, all these elements come together. Po isn't just stronger or wiser, he's more centered. He handles responsibility with grace, conflict with creativity, and relationships with depth. His humor, courage, and compassion now work in harmony rather than separately. His emotional maturity doesn't mean losing who he was. It means becoming the best version of that person. The panda who once doubted his place in the world now shapes its future, not by abandoning his heart, but by fully embracing it. Spiritually, Po's connection to Master Oogway deepens. Oogway's teachings live through memories, visions, and the legacy of the Dragon Warrior. Instead of chasing power, Po begins to understand balance, the harmony between strength, compassion, and destiny. His encounters with the spirit realm in past films prepare him for a role beyond physical mastery. Another important aspect of Po's evolution is identity. He once believed Kung Fu was only for the elite, warriors raised, trained, and destined for greatness. Now he embodies the idea that destiny chooses the most unexpected hearts. Even as a leader, he preserves his core. The panda who loves noodles, laughs easily, and fights for those he cares about. The mantle of spiritual leadership demands something different from combat. It means shaping generations, protecting harmony, and guiding those who come after. Po's legacy is not only defined by his victories, but by the belief system he represents. His presence reminds the world that greatness can begin with doubt, insecurity, and dreams bigger than one's circumstances. One of the most powerful parts of this shift is acceptance. Po does not fight the idea of becoming a spiritual leader. He grows into it, slowly but naturally. His journey proves that leadership is not imposed by force or tradition, but emerges from the heart of someone who has learned, fallen, risen, and evolved. By the end of this chapter in his life, Po stands at the edge of two worlds, the physical and the spiritual, the student and the master. He does not abandon his past, he transforms it into purpose. His future role is not about being above others, but about lifting them upward. This new phase redefines what a leader looks like in the Kung Fu Panda world. Not a stern monk, not a silent guardian, but a warrior who laughs, learns, mentors, protects, and inspires. Po, once the outsider, becomes the very soul of Kung Fu's future. Po's identity has always been shaped by two powerful forces: his role as a warrior and his gradual transition into becoming a mentor. From the moment he was chosen as the Dragon Warrior, his journey has been about mastering not just Kung Fu, but himself. By the time Kung Fu Panda 4 approaches, Po is no longer defined solely by survival and combat. He is on the threshold of becoming a guide for the next generation, making his identity more complex and meaningful than ever. His evolution into a dual role begins subtly. In earlier films, Po fought to prove his worth, defend his friends, and earn respect. His victories over Tai Lung, Lord Shen, and Kai established him as a legend in the Valley of Peace. But as time passes, the world begins to see something deeper in him, wisdom growing alongside strength. His success isn't simply based on physical power, but on intuition, empathy, creativity, and the ability to adapt. The warrior inside Po still thrives. He remains fearless in the face of danger and inventive during combat. His unique fighting style, blending improvisation, panda instincts, and with each villain Po has faced, his approach to conflict has evolved, physically, mentally, and spiritually. In Kung Fu Panda 4, new threats don't just test his Kung Fu, they test his wisdom, leadership, and ability to think beyond traditional combat. Unlike Tai Lung's vengeance, Shen's trauma-fueled destruction, or Kai's hunger for power from the spirit realm, the new antagonist introduces a fresh kind of danger, more calculated, less predictable, and aware of Po's legacy and influence. Po's strategy for dealing with new villains no longer revolves around trying to prove himself. He doesn't fight just to win. He fights to protect balance and the people who depend on him. His confidence allows him to assess threats calmly, rather than react with panic or ego. Instead of rushing into battle, he observes, listens, and understands the motivations behind the threat. One major shift in his strategy is collaboration. Po recognizes that battles are no longer his alone. He relies on allies, whether it's the Furious Five, other panda warriors, Shifu, or new fighters he mentors. Where early Po would dive into danger unplanned, the mature Po delegates, strategizes, and assigns roles based on others' strengths. This marks the difference between a warrior who fights and a leader who leads. His understanding of his enemies has also deepened. Instead of seeing villains as pure evil, Po looks at their pain, ambition, and history. That doesn't make him weaker. It makes him more effective. Just like he helped redeem characters like Tai Lung in spirit, or Shen in understanding, he now tries to find meaning behind opposition, rather than only defeating it. This psychological insight becomes one of his most powerful weapons. Spiritually, Po draws from Oogway's legacy. The idea that there are no accidents shapes his decisions. If a new villain rises, Po sees it as part of a bigger teaching, not just a battle. He understands that every threat challenges the world to evolve, just as each past enemy shaped his growth. Po leans into that wisdom, blending instinct with intuition. He is no longer afraid of not knowing the answers. Instead, he builds strategies around learning, adaptation, and trust. His combat style reflects that too. He switches between offense, defense, teaching, and improvising with an ease no villain expects. His unpredictability remains one of his greatest strengths. When faced with stronger or unfamiliar powers, Po doesn't rely on brute strength. He studies weaknesses, uses environment to his advantage, and encourages his allies to use their natural talents rather than imitate him. This shift from self-reliance to collective strategy makes him far more formidable than ever before. Even humor becomes part of his tactical approach. Po disarms tension, disrupts enemy focus, and keeps his team calm through his comedic timing. What once looked like silliness now acts as a strategic tool, confusing enemies, inspiring allies, and maintaining morale even in chaos. A notable evolution in Poe's strategy is his acceptance that not every villain must be destroyed. Some need to be defeated physically, some need to be humbled, and some need to be understood. This layered approach gives him an edge that previous masters didn't always have: compassion without compromise. When facing a new villain with sophisticated tactics or modern threats, Poe uses his greatest advantage: unpredictability merged with enlightenment. His understanding of chi, identity, and inner balance allows him to think and act beyond what an opponent expects. He doesn't just react, he redirects. In Kung Fu Panda 4, Poe proves that strategy is no longer about domination, but harmony. He doesn't just protect Kung Fu, he preserves its spirit. Defeating a villain isn't just about victory. It's about ensuring the world grows stronger from the conflict rather than weaker. That mindset cements Poe as not only a hero of the past, but the guardian of Kung Fu's future. Kung Fu's future. Poe's journey in Kung Fu Panda 4 is not only about guiding others, it is also about uncovering new truths about himself. Even after becoming the Dragon Warrior and defeating legendary foes, his growth doesn't stop. With every new challenge, enemy, or responsibility, Poe discovers lessons that shape him further as a warrior, mentor, and future spiritual leader. One of the biggest lessons he learns is that leadership is not about being the strongest fighter, it is about being the most grounded. In the earlier films, Poe worried constantly about proving his worth. By the time he faces new dangers in Part 4, he begins to understand that true leadership comes from inner peace, clarity, and trust in others. He doesn't have to do everything himself. Passing on knowledge is as powerful as using it. Another key lesson is accepting transition. Master Shifu and Oogway both prepared Poe for the idea that being a hero is only one phase of his destiny. In Kung Fu Panda 4, he confronts the idea that his role is shifting, from student and fighter to teacher and guardian of tradition. Letting go of his old identity is not easy, but Poe learns that evolution doesn't erase who he was, it expands who he becomes. He also learns the importance of vulnerability. Instead of hiding insecurity or pretending to have every answer, Poe becomes comfortable admitting when he's uncertain. That honesty helps him connect with allies and students. It teaches him that vulnerability is not a weakness. It is a bridge that builds loyalty, trust, and understanding. Another important lesson is about legacy. Poe begins to realize that his influence is no longer limited to fights he wins, but to the people he shapes. When he guides new warriors or inspires villagers, he learns that his impact will live on through those he mentors. This understanding drives him to become more careful, wise, and attentive in his choices. He also learns to balance past and present. His connection to ancient teachings doesn't mean he must replicate them exactly. Instead, he discovers that wisdom must adapt to changing times. He doesn't need to become another Oogway, he needs to be Poe, but with responsibility and intention. His version of leadership blends fun, freedom, tradition, and modern thinking. Poe learns to see conflict differently too. Earlier villains showed him that pain often births aggression. In Kung Fu Panda 4, he approaches threats with greater insight. Instead of seeing enemies as obstacles to destroy, he sometimes sees them as broken forces of potential change. Understanding motivations becomes part of his strength. There is also a lesson in balance between heart and duty. Poe has always been emotional, expressive, and spontaneous. Instead of abandoning that nature to look serious as a leader, he learns that his authenticity is part of what makes him effective. His laughter doesn't make him any less wise, and his love of food doesn't make him any less powerful. A surprising lesson he confronts is the inevitability of his successors. Just like Shifu once guided him, he must now prepare someone else to inherit his role. This realization teaches him humility. Not everyone he teaches will be like him, but they may surpass him in their own way. Letting go of control becomes part of his strength. Poe also learns about trust on a deeper level. Trusting allies isn't just about believing in their skills, but believing in their judgment. He learns to step back when necessary, allowing others to rise without overshadowing them. Perhaps the most profound lesson is that greatness is not defined by what one achieves alone, but by what one enables others to achieve. Poe carries forward the spirit of Oogway's wisdom, but in his own unrepeatable way. Instead of trying to walk in the footsteps of past masters, he learns to leave new footprints for others to follow. By the end of Kung Fu Panda 4, Po is not just wiser, he is more complete. Every challenge teaches him something new. To let go, to listen, to guide, to trust, to evolve, and to remain true to his essence. He proves that learning is not the opposite of mastery. It is the heart of it. Po has always been defined by his humor, enthusiasm, and relatable awkwardness. From the start of the Kung Fu Panda saga, his comedic personality set him apart from traditional kung fu heroes who were serious, disciplined, and stoic. What makes Po so unique is that even as he evolves into a leader and spiritual successor, he never abandons the qualities that make him authentic. Instead of replacing his humor with formality, he learns how to balance comedy with responsibility in a way no other master before him has demonstrated. When Po was first chosen as the Dragon Warrior, his jokes, clumsiness, and excitement were seen as weaknesses. He didn't fit the mold of what a kung fu master should look like. Characters like Tigress, Shifu, and the Furious Five initially dismissed him because his personality didn't match their expectations. But over time, not only did Po prove his worth, he changed the perception of what strength and leadership could look like. In Kung Fu Panda 4, that balance deepens even further. Po doesn't suppress his playful side to appear serious. He understands that his humor is part of his strength. His laughter reduces fear. His jokes break tension during difficult moments. His unpredictability confuses enemies and motivates allies. His charm disarms even the most intimidating personalities, allowing him to connect with characters who wouldn't normally trust a warrior. But make no mistake, Po is no longer the naive dreamer from the first film. When the situation demands it, he can switch into a leadership mindset instantly. The difference now is that his authority doesn't come from speaking loudly or acting stern. It comes from presence, experience, and emotional intelligence. He knows when to guide others gently and when to step in with force. His serious side appears most clearly when the safety of others is at stake. In high-risk moments, the joking pauses and a quieter, commanding Po emerges. His voice steadies, his movements focus, and those around him feel the shift. The transition isn't forced. It's natural. He doesn't pretend to be wise. He has become wise through the struggles he survived. What makes Po so compelling as a leader is that he bridges two worlds, the traditional discipline of Kung Fu and the modern understanding of connection and individuality. Earlier masters often suppressed emotion and expression. Po embraces them. For him, leadership doesn't mean erasing personality. It means sharpening it into a tool that inspires others. His humor also prevents him from becoming arrogant. Even after becoming a legend, he still treats people with warmth and humility. He doesn't lord his title over anyone. He still gets excited about food, still cracks jokes, still says the wrong thing occasionally, and still celebrates small victories with childlike joy. This relatability draws others to him and makes him a leader people want to follow. In teaching and mentoring roles, his comedic nature becomes particularly powerful. New students don't feel intimidated by him. They feel encouraged. His energy creates an environment where failure isn't shameful. It's part of growth. He shows others that greatness doesn't come from perfection, but perseverance and self-belief. Yet, Po also recognizes that leadership sometimes requires stillness, silence, and thoughtful reflection. He has moments where humor gives way to deep clarity, especially when discussing destiny, responsibility, or the balance of the world. These moments prove that his comedy isn't a mask. It's one side of a multi-layered personality. Even his enemies underestimate him because of his personality, which becomes a strategic advantage. Villains assume his humor means weakness, only to discover he possesses spiritual depth, tactical intelligence, and immense strength. They expect a clown, but face a master. Ultimately, Po's greatest achievement is proving that being serious and being joyful are not opposites. He shows that a leader can laugh and still command respect, that wisdom can come wrapped in humor, and that authenticity is more powerful than rigid perfection. Instead of abandoning who he is to grow, Po evolves by embracing every part of himself: comic, heroic, emotional, and wise. Po's journey would not be complete without the two father figures who shaped his identity in vastly different but equally meaningful ways. Mr. Ping, his adoptive goose father, and Li Shan, his biological panda father. Their influences don't compete. They combine to create the foundation of who Po becomes by the time Kung Fu Panda 4 unfolds. Each represents a unique side of his personality, and understanding their roles reveals how Po develops strength, heart, confidence, and belonging. Mr. Ping symbolizes unconditional love, support, and the courage to dream beyond limitation. From the moment he adopted Po, he provided a sense of home and safety, even if he didn't understand Po's destiny in the beginning. His noodle shop upbringing gave Po humility, patience, creativity, and emotional grounding. Ping's constant encouragement, even when fueled by misunderstanding, gave Po the belief that he was worthy of something more. Even when Po became the Dragon Warrior, Mr. Ping struggled to adjust, but never stopped loving him. Over time, he went from fearful, overprotective father to proud supporter of Po's destiny. His presence reminds Po of his roots, of the value of family, simplicity, and compassion. In moments of doubt, Mr. Ping's words often recenter him emotionally. Po's humor, optimism, and warmth come greatly from his goose father's influence. Li Shan, on the other hand, introduced Po to the lost world of pandas and his biological heritage. Meeting him unlocked a part of Po's identity he never knew existed. Through Li Shan, he learned about his ancestry, the culture of his people, and the legacy of Panda's connection to Qi. This reconnection to his roots helped Po better understand his own spiritual power. Li Shan's influence isn't about raising Po, but helping him discover where he came from. He offers pride, tradition, and cultural memory. His love is quieter and comes with a sense of rediscovery and restoration. Being around Li Shan teaches Po to balance his past with his future, and his biological lineage with the life he built in the Valley of Peace. Together, both fathers play a crucial role in Po's development. Mr. Ping taught him to dream even without knowing his origins. Li San showed him where those dreams connect with destiny. One gave him love before purpose. The other helped him understand his purpose beyond love. Po never has to choose between them. Instead, he becomes stronger because of both. In Kung Fu Panda 4, these influences shape his leadership and emotional intelligence. From Mr. Ping, he inherited empathy, comedic charm, and the belief in nurturing others. From Li Shan, he inherited bravery, legacy awareness, and the responsibility to carry on something larger than himself. When faced with major decisions, both influences echo in his choices. Their dynamic with each other also matters. Initially, Mr. Ping feels threatened by Li Shan's arrival, fearing he might lose Po. But over time, the two fathers learn to coexist, even forming an unlikely partnership in loving Po. This teaches Po another essential lesson, that family isn't about biology alone, but about sincerity and acceptance. Po's ability to connect with different kinds of people, villagers, warriors, students, and strangers, emerges from growing up between two worlds. One humble and practical, the other ancestral and spiritual. His identity isn't split, it's layered. He doesn't abandon the noodle shop when he discovers his heritage, nor does he stop embracing his panda nature after becoming a kung fu master. By combining the love of Mr. Ping and the heritage of Li Shan, Po finds balance, the heart of a son and the spirit of a leader. His compassion and strength stem from the dual upbringing that shaped him. Without Mr. Ping, Po might not have had the emotional stability to pursue destiny. Without Li Shan, Po might not have unlocked his true power and legacy. In the end, Po's strength lies not in choosing one identity, but in honoring both, panda and son of a goose, warrior and dreamer, leader and learner. His fathers don't divide his identity, they complete it. Kung Fu Panda 4 continues the franchise's legacy of seamlessly blending heartfelt lessons with light-hearted comedy, creating an experience that appeals to both children and adults. The balance between humor and serious themes is one of the film's strongest storytelling tools, allowing it to explore complex topics such as duty, destiny, change, and emotional growth, without losing its entertaining charm. At the center of this balance is Po himself, a character whose natural goofiness becomes a pathway to profound realizations. His clumsy antics, awkward enthusiasm, and occasional misunderstandings generate laugh-out-loud moments. Yet behind those laughs lies a deeper emotional thread. Audiences see how Po uses humor not as a distraction, but as part of his personality, helping him cope with pressure and uncertainty. The movie introduces new characters and environments that expand the comedic palette while also deepening the emotional stakes. Supporting characters, whether returning heroes like Tigress or newcomers with quirky traits, add layers of situational and character-driven humor. Their interactions with Po often highlight differences in personality and values, leading to humorous exchanges that still reveal growth or tension. For example, a character who takes themselves too seriously may clash with Po's playful attitude, resulting in comedic conflict that eventually leads to mutual understanding or respect. These moments ensure the film remains entertaining, while gradually tackling more mature ideas about identity, leadership, and change. The serious themes in Kung Fu Panda 4 are woven carefully into the narrative rather than delivered in heavy-handed monologues. One of the core messages revolves around transitioning to new roles and accepting responsibility. Po faces the challenge of becoming a spiritual leader or teacher, an evolution from his earlier identity as the Dragon Warrior. This major shift is filled with uncertainty, self-doubt, and expectations from others. Instead of presenting these anxieties in a somber tone, the film infuses humor into Po's attempts to take on these new responsibilities. He may misinterpret ancient wisdom, stumble through rituals, or try too hard to sound wise, which creates comedic relief that also underscores his internal struggle. Through this approach, the audience can connect emotionally with Po's journey because the serious theme feels authentic and relatable rather than overly dramatic. Another important theme involves legacy and mentorship. As Po learns what it might mean to pass his mantle to someone else or guide the next generation, the movie uses humor to diffuse the tension of potential change. Scenes involving training mishaps, awkward mentoring attempts, or exaggerated reactions to minor setbacks allow viewers to laugh even as they reflect on the deeper question: how do heroes evolve when their roles shift? The humor keeps these transitions from feeling too heavy, while the emotional resonance remains intact. Children enjoy the comedy on the surface, while older viewers appreciate the symbolic meaning beneath it. The antagonists and challenges in the story also balance humor and seriousness. Villains may have intimidating goals, tragic backstories, or philosophical motives, yet their interactions with Po or his allies sometimes involve moments of ironic humor or unexpected absurdity. This prevents the tone from becoming too dark, while still maintaining narrative tension. The visual humor, facial expressions, exaggerated fighting styles, unexpected pauses, or comedic timing and action sequences helps ensure younger audiences remain engaged, even during scenes with higher stakes. Visually, Kung Fu Panda 4 uses animation techniques to merge humor and gravitas. Body language, timing, and expressive facial animations convey emotional states while allowing for comedic exaggeration. During serious conversations, subtle visual jokes, like someone quietly panicking in the background or reacting dramatically to minor inconveniences, keep scenes from feeling too intense for younger viewers. This layered animation approach respects the intelligence of the audience, trusting them to pick up on both comedic and emotional details without needing explicit explanation. Dialogue also plays a central role in balancing tone. Characters often use sarcasm, playful banter, or witty observations to lighten otherwise tense moments. Even Po's moments of insecurity are presented with comedic framing, allowing viewers to empathize without becoming overwhelmed by sadness or pressure. This tone management makes the story accessible across age groups and cultural backgrounds, as humor becomes a universal bridge to understanding. The film incorporates heartfelt themes involving friendship, self-acceptance, and the courage to face change. These serious ideas are introduced gradually through encounters, challenges, and character growth. Humor acts as a guide, helping the audience move through emotional beats without resistance. A moment of fear might be followed by a joke that diffuses tension, giving space for reflection. A moment of victory might be undercut by a comedic twist that keeps the tone from becoming overly triumphant or self-important. Kung Fu Panda 4, like its predecessors, also uses humor to challenge stereotypes and expectations. Characters who appear serious or stoic might reveal hidden quirks, while those who seem silly may demonstrate surprising wisdom. This interplay reinforces the franchise's underlying message that greatness comes in many forms, and that self-expression is not limited by appearances. In the midst of comedy, the film reminds audiences that strength, leadership, and purpose often emerge from vulnerability and authenticity. Importantly, the humor never mocks or diminishes the serious themes. It coexists with them. The emotional core of the story remains strong, supported rather than overshadowed by comedy. Moments of reflection, loss, or growth are given space to breathe, often surrounded by lighter scenes that maintain balance. This pacing helps the audience process emotional developments without feeling disconnected or drained. Parents watching the film with their children can appreciate the deeper messages, while kids remain captivated by the visual gags, witty lines, and exaggerated action. The balance ensures the film has replay value across age groups. Younger viewers may laugh at Poe's antics, while older audiences may notice the symbolic meaning behind those same moments. This dual appeal contributes to the movie's broad success and lasting impact. The serious themes in Kung Fu Panda 4 also connect to earlier entries in the series, reinforcing continuity while expanding character development. Poe's past struggles with identity and belonging evolve into new challenges related to leadership and legacy. The franchise acknowledges his past without relying solely on nostalgia, using humor to reference old moments while pushing the character forward. For example, old jokes or personality traits may resurface in unexpected ways during serious scenes, serving both as callbacks and character-driven humor. Even the action sequences reflect this balance. Epic kung fu battles might include moments of slapstick or exaggerated reactions without diminishing the intensity of the fight. These tonal shifts keep the pace dynamic and engaging. Serious stakes are still present. Lives may be in danger. Destinies may be at risk. But the humor prevents the mood from becoming too grim for a family audience. Poe's personal relationships, whether with friends, mentors, or adversaries, also illustrate this tonal harmony. Emotional conversations may include light jokes or awkward silences that add realism and relatability. Characters may express concern or doubt while still teasing or bantering with one another. These interactions build emotional depth without pushing scenes into melodrama. Ultimately, Kung Fu Panda 4's skillful balance of humor and serious themes stems from an understanding of its audience and the franchise's identity. The movie embraces its comedic roots while confidently exploring maturity, transition, and personal growth. The humor enhances rather than distracts, acting as a narrative tool that guides the audience through emotional peaks and valleys. By blending laughter with meaningful storytelling, Kung Fu Panda 4 remains entertaining, emotionally rich, and universally appealing. The film demonstrates that humor and seriousness are not opposites but complementary elements that, when combined thoughtfully, create a layered and memorable cinematic experience. Poe's evolution as both a warrior and emerging mentor becomes especially clear in the way he approaches training new characters in Kung Fu Panda. 4. Unlike the disciplined, traditional methods once used by Master Shifu, Poe's approach is shaped by his own origins, clumsy beginnings, unexpected creativity, emotional intelligence, and a belief that greatness can come from anywhere. His training style is not rigid or fear-based. Instead, it is adaptive, intuitive, humorous, and deeply personal. He does not try to replicate the old masters. He becomes his own kind of teacher. When Poe interacts with newer warriors or potential successors, he does not force them into predefined molds. He recognizes that each individual has unique strengths that may not fit classic kung fu traditions. His philosophy is built on the simple truth he once proved himself. Inner potential can overpower years of conventional training when confidence is unlocked. This makes him patient with learners who struggle, supportive of underdogs, and surprisingly insightful about what makes someone special. Where past masters focused on perfection, Poe focuses on progress, individuality, and emotional balance. His sessions often begin with observation rather than instruction. He watches how someone moves, reacts to stress, or interprets danger before teaching them anything physical. For him, mindset comes before form. If a new fighter lacks confidence, he boosts morale before demonstrating technique. If someone has natural power but no discipline, he guides their focus instead of stifling their identity. He remembers how Shifu initially doubted him, and he refuses to let doubt define someone's future. Poe also blends humor into his methods. He knows tension blocks learning, and laughter frees instincts. What once seemed like random silliness from him has become a teaching weapon. Unexpected exercises, playful sparring, storytelling from his past failures, and even food-related metaphors that make complex skills easier to grasp. Instead of shaming mistakes, he turns them into memorable lessons. Students don't fear him, they trust him. At the same time, he does not ignore discipline. His respect for Shifu and Master Oogway continues to influence him. He teaches the importance of balance, inner peace, and patience, especially when students chase power too quickly. He does not hide the reality that being the Dragon Warrior came with heavy responsibility, loss, and sacrifice. His guidance mixes emotional honesty with motivational strength. He shows that growth comes from acceptance, not denial. When training fighters with different backgrounds, foxes, rabbits, pandas, tigers, or completely new species, Po applies flexible strategies. He adapts techniques to body types, instincts, and personalities. Light-footed characters might learn evasion and agility. Heavier ones learn momentum and stability. Fast thinkers learn improvisation. Instead of forcing everyone into Furious 5 standards, he encourages new forms of Kung Fu that evolve naturally. He also uses storytelling as a mentor's tool. He recounts how each villain he faced taught him something. Tai Lung showed him the danger of entitlement. Shen revealed the pain of fear-driven pride. Kai demonstrated the emptiness of power without connection. These stories help his students understand that fighting is not just physical. It's tied to destiny, emotion, and inner clarity. Another major element of his training is teamwork. He often recreates the group synergy he learned with the Furious 5, showing students how combined strengths become unstoppable. He teaches them to see others not as rivals, but allies in shared purpose. Where earlier masters emphasized personal mastery first, Po sees community as a foundation for success. His bond with his fathers, Li Shen and Ping, also affects his teaching style. From Ping, he inherited warmth, inclusivity, and the ability to make everyone feel valued. From Li, he learned heritage, pride, and cultural connection. These influences make Po nurture identity in his students, encouraging them to honor where they come from as they grow into who they want to be. Po does not pretend to have all the answers. He admits his own flaws openly, his overeating, past insecurities, awkwardness, and failures. Instead of weakening his authority, this honesty strengthens it. Students see him not as an unreachable legend, but as someone who earned his place through persistence and heart. As villains evolve, so do his lessons. He trains new characters to think beyond brute strength. He prepares them to face trickery, emotional manipulation, and spiritual threats. He emphasizes awareness of surroundings, opponents, and inner states. Meditation, breath control, and focus drills become a natural part of sessions rather than ceremonial afterthoughts. When dealing with the next potential Dragon Warrior, Po instinctively balances mentoring and testing. He does not try to replace himself. He tries to raise someone who can surpass him in their own way. He gives them challenges that force creativity, self-reflection, and resilience. If someone struggles, he guides rather than rescues. If someone succeeds, he celebrates without creating arrogance. In Kung Fu Panda 4, Po's training style reflects everything he has become: warrior, student, teacher, legend, and friend. He is proof that true strength comes not from knowing everything, but from helping others discover what has always been inside them. His methods are imperfect, unpredictable, and unconventional. But like Po himself, they work because they are driven by heart, belief, and the courage to let others shine. Po's identity has always been a fusion of heart, comedy, and unexpected greatness. And by the time Kung Fu Panda 4 unfolds, his ability to balance humor with heroism has become one of his defining strengths rather than a quirk of his personality. From the beginning, Po never fit the mold of a traditional warrior. He wasn't graceful like Tigress, disciplined like Shifu, or mysterious like Master Oogway. Yet the world came to love him because he didn't abandon his true nature in order to be taken seriously. Instead, he proved that laughter and lightness could walk side by side with courage and destiny. In the new chapter of his journey, his humor no longer undermines his legend. It enhances it in ways no other warrior could achieve. Po's comedic instincts are not distractions. They are survival tools. When tension rises and others freeze, his spontaneous remarks or goofy reactions break fear's grip. What seems like accidental timing is actually a reflection of emotional intelligence. Humor becomes his way of diffusing panic, easing allies into confidence, or confusing enemies who expect intimidation. His laughter does not erase the seriousness of a situation. It prevents despair from taking hold. Even Shifu, who once saw Po's antics as incompetence, has come to understand that his spirit is what sets him apart from warriors driven only by rigid focus. His heroism is not powered by stoicism. It thrives on authenticity. Po never pretends to be flawless. He trips, overeats, panics, and blurts out thoughts at the worst moments. But these vulnerabilities make him relatable and trustworthy. When people see a hero who struggles openly and still charges into danger, they believe that courage is attainable. Rather than creating distance like traditional legends, Poe's personality pulls others closer. His humor becomes a bridge between leadership and friendship, ensuring that those around him never feel overshadowed or insignificant. During battles, his style blends comedy with combat. He uses his body weight, awkward flexibility, and unconventional reflexes to create unpredictable attacks. One moment he's tumbling into an enemy by accident, and the next he's turning that stumble into a knockout move. His enemies often underestimate him because of his humor, and that underestimation becomes his greatest tactical advantage. When villains expect a proud, stoic warrior, and are met instead with an expressive, joking panda who demolishes them anyway, their composure cracks before their defenses do. His comedic timing also strengthens morale among allies. The Furious Five, once uncertain about his presence, now recognize him as the emotional core of their group. In dark moments, when stakes climb and fear creeps in, Poe lightens the atmosphere without dismissing the danger. He doesn't joke because he's careless. He jokes because he refuses to let gloom dictate the moment. This resilience inspires others to push past their fear and trust in their abilities. Even characters like Tigress, who used to reject levity, have learned to respect his style because they've witnessed how many victories it has yielded. Yet Poe knows when silence is required. His development across the series has taught him to read a room, sense emotional weight, and choose his tone carefully. In Kung Fu Panda 4, there are moments where he lets his voice fall calm. His expression turns serious, and his words carry deeper gravity. The contrast between his humor and rare solemnity makes those serious moments even more powerful. When Poe drops the jokes, everyone listens, not because they expect perfection, but because they know he speaks from truth and heart. His humor is not a shield that hides fear. It is acceptance of it. Poe never pretends to be fearless, and that honesty frees him. Rather than being paralyzed by the enormity of threats, he channels his nerves into lively energy. Villains built on intimidation, like Tai Lung or Shen, found themselves disarmed by Poe's refusal to react with dread. By Kung Fu Panda 4, this quality has evolved into a deliberate psychological weapon. He breaks villainous arrogance with unpredictability, empathy, and joy, forces that warriors rarely wield. Importantly, his humor does not strip away his heroism. It humanizes it. His bravery shines brighter because it comes from someone who laughs, eats dumplings with enthusiasm, and openly expresses wonder. Instead of seeking admiration, Poe celebrates teamwork, small victories, and life's simple pleasures. These traits ripple outward, teaching new warriors that greatness does not require abandoning identity or suppressing personality. Children, villagers, and fellow fighters look up to him, not because he is flawless, but because he is real. His speeches are fueled by genuine excitement. His encouragement is heartfelt rather than formal, and his mistakes are never hidden. He does not lead from a pedestal. He leads from within the crowd, lifting others up with both humor and heroism. In Kung Fu Panda 4, this duality reaches full maturity. Poe recognizes that his laughter and bravery are not opposites. They are parts of the same force. Humor is his way of breathing life into hopelessness, and heroism is how he protects that life. Where others might choose one path, Poe embraces both, becoming a symbol of strength that is accessible rather than distant. He proves that a warrior does not need to abandon joy to face darkness, and that the world does not always need a silent savior. It sometimes needs a laughing one. It's a laughing one. Poe's growth into a respected leader in Kung Fu Panda 4 is not based solely on physical strength or combat mastery. It is deeply rooted in his emotional intelligence. Unlike traditional warriors who rely on discipline and intimidation, Poe connects through empathy, intuition, and emotional awareness that shape every choice he makes. His leadership is not about commanding others with authority, but guiding them by understanding their fears, strengths, and hidden potential. From the beginning of his journey, Poe has been emotionally transparent. He shows excitement, fear, confusion, and joy without shame. What others once considered immaturity is now one of his greatest strengths. His openness helps people trust him faster than they would trust a serious, distant master. When he meets someone struggling with self-doubt or pressure, he can relate instantly because he lived through those feelings himself. This ability to connect makes him an effective mentor, friend, and motivator. In Kung Fu Panda 4, Po's emotional intelligence plays a major role in how he supports both old allies and new warriors. Instead of pushing them to meet impossible expectations, he listens to what they need. If someone is discouraged, he lifts their spirit. If someone is afraid, he validates their fear rather than dismissing it. If someone is overconfident, he gently redirects them without humiliation. His guidance is not one size fits all. It's adapted to each personality. Po also reads situations instinctively. He notices shifts in tone, posture, and silence. Where rigid leaders may overlook emotions as distractions, Po sees them as vital information. Whether facing conflict within a team or sensing danger from a villain, he picks up cues that others ignore. This awareness helps him make decisions that protect not only lives, but morale. His relationship with Shifu is a reflection of his emotional growth. In earlier films, Po sought Shifu's approval as a student. Now, in Kung Fu Panda 4, he acts as both student and equal, supporting Shifu emotionally as the older master grapples with aging, legacy, and change. Po doesn't just follow. He comforts, encourages, and reassures. Their bond is no longer about discipline versus chaos. It is about mutual respect and emotional understanding. Po's insight into others also comes from his bond with his fathers, Mr. Ping and Li Shan. From Ping, he learned care, affection, and the power of making people feel seen. From Li Shan, he learned cultural connection, pride in identity, and the importance of emotional roots. These influences make Po more than a warrior. He becomes a guardian of hearts and futures. Even in combat, Po's emotional intelligence becomes an advantage. He reads opponents beyond their physical moves. He senses fear, rage, and insecurity behind their attacks. This allows him to outsmart enemies without relying on force alone. When possible, he tries to reach them emotionally before defeating them physically, making his victories layered with meaning rather than brute dominance. His leadership also shines through his ability to inspire rather than intimidate. Warriors under his guidance don't follow him out of fear. They follow because he believes in them before they believe in themselves. He never forgets what it felt like to be overlooked, and he refuses to let anyone else experience that under his watch. Even humor, one of his core traits, is part of his emotional intelligence. He uses it to ease tension, redirect panic, and restore hope. Where another leader might rely on silence or speeches, Po uses laughter to remind people they are not alone. His positivity is not ignorance. It is a conscious choice to fight despair with joy. As he prepares to pass on his legacy, Po's emotional intelligence becomes the foundation of his mentorship. He does not seek a successor who is perfect in technique. He seeks someone whose heart is ready to carry the weight of leadership with compassion. For Po, power without empathy is dangerous, but power with emotional awareness is unstoppable. In Kung Fu Panda 4, Po shows that true leadership is not about being invulnerable, it is about being connected. His strength comes from understanding himself and others, and his legacy is built on hearts uplifted by his guidance. Emotional intelligence is not just part of Po's character. It is the reason he became the Dragon Warrior, and the reason his influence will last long after his battles end. Po's journey from an awkward noodle shop worker to the legendary Dragon Warrior has made him one of the most powerful symbols of courage and self-belief in animated cinema. By the time Kung Fu Panda 4 arrives, his story stands as living proof that destiny is not limited by origin, appearance, or doubt. His courage does not come from being fearless. It comes from acting in spite of fear, failure, and expectations that once crushed him. And his unshakable belief in others is rooted in his own experience of being underestimated his entire life. When Po was first chosen as the Dragon Warrior, no one, not even he, believed he was worthy. The Furious Five dismissed him, Shifu resisted him, and villagers mocked him. But Po's heart refused to accept that worth was decided by tradition or bloodline. His courage began with showing up, even when he felt unprepared and unqualified. Over time, he built confidence not from ego, but from perseverance. In Kung Fu Panda 4, Po's courage is quieter, wiser, and deeper. He no longer fights only to protect others. He fights to pass on what he has learned. He becomes an example of how every weakness can evolve into a strength. His weight, once mocked, becomes an advantage in battle. His love of food, once embarrassing, turns into fuel for creativity and endurance. His clumsiness transforms into unpredictability that outsmarts enemies. Everything that made him different becomes part of what makes him powerful. Self-belief for Po was never about perfection. He failed, panicked, doubted, and almost gave up many times. But he returned every time with a bigger heart and stronger will. That resilience makes him relatable and inspiring. Instead of hiding his insecurities, he embraces them and proves they do not define him. When others see him win, not because he was born great, but because he chose to rise, they start believing in themselves too. His courage also shows in how he protects those he loves. Whether it's his fathers, the Furious Five, new warriors, or villagers, he always steps forward first. But unlike traditional heroes who carry burdens alone, Po empowers others to stand with him. He doesn't hoard greatness, he spreads it. His belief in others becomes a mirror that helps them see their own strength. One of his greatest acts of courage is accepting that leadership is changing him. In Kung Fu Panda 4, he faces the idea that his time as the Soul Dragon Warrior may be ending. Instead of clinging to glory, he embraces the next step with humility. Passing the mantle is not weakness, it is legacy in motion. Only someone who truly believes in his worth can let go of titles without losing identity. Po's courage is also emotional. He forgives those who doubted him, heals old wounds, and confronts his past without bitterness. Meeting his biological father, accepting his adoptive father's fears, and learning about his panda heritage all required bravery beyond battle. He never lets pain close his heart. He grows from it. To the world within the film, Po represents hope. Villagers cheer not because he is invincible, but because he reminds them that greatness can come from the most unexpected places. To his students and allies, he is living proof that flaws do not disqualify destiny. And to enemies, he is a reminder that confidence built on authenticity cannot be broken by mockery or arrogance. His legacy is not just in the villains he defeated, Tai Lung, Shen, Kai, but in the message his life carries, that anyone can rise higher than the world expects. His presence tells children, warriors, and even former skeptics that faith in oneself is a power equal to any kung fu technique. By Kung Fu Panda 4, Po no longer chases belief. He embodies it. His courage is not loud, his confidence is not boastful, and his strength is not conventional. But that is what makes him iconic. He is not a hero because he was chosen. He is a hero because he chose himself. Kung Fu Panda 4 carries forward the rich spiritual undercurrents that have always defined Po's journey. But in this chapter, those themes become deeper, wiser, and more transformative. While the earlier films explored destiny, inner peace, and identity, this installment expands the spiritual dimension to include legacy, intuition, connection to the past, and the passing of wisdom to future generations. Po is no longer just discovering who he is. He is learning what it means to guide others, honor those before him, and accept the spiritual responsibilities that come with leadership. One of the core themes is the evolution of inner peace. In Kung Fu Panda 2, Po unlocked inner peace by facing his traumatic past. By Kung Fu Panda 3, he learned to channel Qi, connecting his personal journey to something much larger. In Kung Fu Panda 4, inner peace is no longer just a power source or emotional milestone. It becomes the foundation for mentorship, decision-making, and self-awareness. Po teaches, fights, and leads from a place of spiritual clarity, rather than physical dominance. The story shows that true strength is not achieved once. It is practiced, maintained, and shared. Spiritual lineage and legacy are also key themes. Master Oogway's teachings live on through Po, but not in a rigid, traditional way. Po does not try to imitate Oogway. He interprets his wisdom through his own personality and experiences. This reflects that spiritual growth is not about copying the past, but carrying it forward in new forms. Po begins to accept that his role is not only to protect the Valley of Peace, but to ensure that Kung Fu, Qi, and the values of the masters continue long after he steps back. There is also a strong focus on acceptance and surrender, not as weakness, but as enlightened strength. Po does not resist change when he realizes he may have to choose a successor. Instead, he embraces it as part of the natural cycle of life and leadership. He understands what Shifu and Oogway understood, that letting go is as important as holding on. This spiritual maturity marks one of the most profound developments in his journey. Connection to ancestors and the spiritual realm continues to guide him. Whether through memories of Oogway, wisdom from Shifu, or the teachings embedded in Kung Fu itself, Po remains in conversation with the past even when the characters are gone. Unlike the physical realm, the spiritual world in Kung Fu Panda is not distant or abstract. It is interwoven with daily decisions. Emotional healing and purpose. A major spiritual message of the film is that identity is both personal and cosmic. Po is still the same dumpling-loving panda, but he now understands that every choice he makes influences more than himself. His spiritual growth reframes strength not as superiority, but as responsibility, to protect, uplift, and guide without ego. Balance is another recurring theme. Previous villains like Tai Lung, pride, Shen, fear, and Kai, greed for power, all disrupted balance in the world. In Kung Fu Panda 4, the antagonist may again threaten harmony, but Po's response is no longer limited to physical confrontation. He approaches conflict with spiritual perspective, seeking understanding, resolution, and peace before violence. If he must fight, it is not for glory or revenge, but to restore balance. Chi, the life force explored in the third film, likely returns not as a climax, but as a natural part of Po's existence. He understands its flow, respects its power, and teaches its value to others. Rather than being treated as a secret technique, Chi becomes a metaphor for unity, inner alignment, and faith in one's deeper nature. Humility is a quiet but constant spiritual current. Despite being a living legend, Po does not see himself as above anyone. He laughs at himself, admits mistakes, honors his roots, and treats students with compassion. This humility is not self-deprecation, it's alignment with truth. The film reinforces that spirituality is not about superiority, but connection. Community and shared destiny also play a vital role. Spirituality in Kung Fu Panda 4 is not a solitary journey. The Valley of Peace, the Panda Village, the Furious Five, and Po's mentors and students are all threads of the same tapestry. Po understands that no warrior stands alone, and no legacy exists in isolation. Teaching others to believe in themselves becomes an act of spiritual continuity. Ultimately, Kung Fu Panda 4 uses Po's character to show that spirituality is not robes, temples, or rituals. It is love, growth, gratitude, guidance, and the courage to transform without losing one's essence. Po proves that enlightenment doesn't erase personality, it enhances it. He doesn't stop being himself to grow spiritually. He becomes more himself than ever before. Po's influence on the Valley of Peace goes beyond his strength as the Dragon Warrior. It's his heart, optimism, and humility that inspire everyone around him. Unlike traditional martial arts heroes, Po doesn't lead through fear or perfection. He leads by being relatable, kind, and unapologetically himself. His journey from an ordinary noodle shop worker to a legendary warrior proves that greatness can come from the most unexpected places. This gives the villagers hope that they too can achieve more than their circumstances suggest. Po also encourages unity among the Furious Five and teaches others to embrace their differences rather than hide them. His ability to find joy in challenges, forgive enemies, and uplift those who doubt themselves makes him a symbol of peace and resilience. Whenever danger threatens the valley, Po becomes a reminder that true strength comes from believing in oneself, protecting others, and never giving up. Through his actions, humor, and compassion, he transforms fear into courage and uncertainty into inspiration for the entire community. One of the most powerful ways Po inspires change is through how he deals with his enemies. Instead of seeing every villain as someone to destroy, Po often tries to understand their pain, past, and motivation. His journey shows that not everyone who becomes a threat is born evil. Many are shaped by loneliness, rejection, or anger. By recognizing this, Po becomes a bridge between darkness and redemption. For example, he didn't fight Shen or Kai, only with fists, but with understanding and inner strength. His ability to forgive and offer second chances makes others rethink their choices and actions. This compassionate approach sends a message to the Valley of Peace that true warriors don't just win battles. They heal wounds, mend communities, and help others grow. Po's kindness changes how the people of the valley view conflict, encouraging them to choose empathy over hatred and unity over fear. In doing so, he doesn't just stop villains, he prevents future ones from being created. The title of Dragon Warrior is more than just a rank. It represents hope, courage, and the belief that greatness can rise from anywhere. Po transformed the meaning of this legacy by proving that destiny doesn't depend on physical perfection, noble birth, or elite training. Before Po, the idea of a dragon warrior was tied to predictable qualities: strength, discipline, and traditional mastery of Kung Fu. But Po shattered those expectations. His journey showed citizens of the Valley of Peace that greatness is built through heart, humility, and authenticity. The Dragon Warrior legacy now symbolizes second chances, unexpected heroes, and the power of individuality. When children in the valley look at Po, they don't just see a fighter, they see themselves. His story tells everyone, from farmers to shopkeepers, that their dreams matter. Po's rise also reshaped how masters, students, and future warriors think about potential. Instead of searching for perfection, they search for spirit. The symbol of the Dragon Warrior became a cultural reminder that destiny is not something you find. It's something you grow into. Say, start for the final heading. Po's final evolution into a leader, legend, and teacher represents the culmination of everything he has endured since the moment he tumbled into the Jade Palace with dreams bigger than his strength, confidence, and understanding. What began as clumsy enthusiasm and fanboy energy slowly transformed into real mastery, forged through humiliation, perseverance, and a deepening sense of responsibility. As Po fully embraces this final phase, he is no longer just the Dragon Warrior in name or title. He becomes a mentor who embodies the wisdom, power, and compassion that others now look to for guidance. His journey from noodle shop helper to spiritual leader of the Valley of Peace wasn't about sudden success, luck, or prophecy. It was about repeatedly proving that greatness doesn't always arrive in the form expected by tradition or legacy. When people across the valley now mention Po, they no longer see him merely as the martial arts prodigy who defeated Tai Lung, Shen, or Kai. They recall how he leads with heart, how his victories never came from ego, and how he uses humor to make even the heaviest burdens feel lighter. His courage has become a teaching tool, rather than a shield only he can use. The Furious Five, once his role models, have grown to respect him not just as an equal, but as a guide who inspires them to think beyond fighting and focus on shaping new warriors with kindness. He passes down lessons from Master Shifu, Oogway, and his battles, not through stiff lectures, but through stories layered with laughter and meaning. Even the next generation of Kung Fu learners sees Po as the kind of teacher who never forgets how it feels to doubt oneself, and that empathy makes his guidance unforgettable. As a legend, Po's legacy is not carved in gold statues or scrolls. It's woven into the way the valley stands united. Villagers remember not only how he protected them from enemies, but how he brought them hope in times of fear, speaking to them like equals, never gods or guardians. His legend isn't about unmatched strength, but about how belief in oneself can be a greater force than any technique. The once unlikely hero is now proof that destiny is not inherited. It is chosen every day through actions, compassion, and resilience. His leadership is defined by collaboration rather than command. He listens more than he dictates, trains rather than controls, and uplifts rather than intimidates. Even in his teaching role, he carries his signature playfulness, showing students that discipline and joy can coexist. He teaches not to create copies of himself, but to help each warrior discover their own identity and power. The Valley of Peace grows stronger, not because Po stands at its center like a lone guardian, but because he teaches everyone around him how to stand taller. As he embraces his role guiding future protectors, he proves that leadership is not the end of a warrior's journey, it is the transformation of it. His story becomes a living legend passed through families, students, and masters alike, proving that even the most ordinary beginnings can lead to extraordinary destinies when shaped by courage, humility, and love for others. Love for others. Po's mastery of Kung Fu in his final evolution isn't just about forms, strikes, or legendary battles. It's about how he reshapes the very meaning of Kung Fu for the Valley of Peace and future generations. In the beginning, he saw Kung Fu as something flashy, unattainable, reserved only for graceful warriors like Tigress or venerated masters like Shifu. But now, as a legend, he proves that Kung Fu is not defined by physical perfection, but by inner harmony, adaptability, and purpose. His unique fighting style, an unpredictable blend of panda instincts, chai awareness, agility, humor, and creative improvisation, becomes a symbol of possibility. Where others focus on rigid tradition, Po introduces fluid thinking. He reminds his students that even the most polished technique is useless without heart, and even the clumsiest movement can become powerful when guided by belief. Instead of forcing students to mimic a single school or lineage, he encourages them to explore how their bodies, emotions, and experiences shape their personal style of Kung Fu. He uses dumpling metaphors, memories of his noodle shop days, and his own mistakes to add depth and relatability to every lesson. Whether he's sparring in the Jade Palace courtyard or meditating near Oogway's peach tree, his presence radiates confidence without arrogance. Po becomes the bridge between old and new Kung Fu philosophy. He keeps Shifu's discipline alive, but infuses it with Oogway's spiritual wisdom, his father's warmth, and his own creative energy. Under his leadership, the next era of warriors sees Kung Fu not merely as combat, but as a way to balance strength and soul. He teaches that winning isn't about overpowering an opponent. It's about understanding them, disarming fear, and protecting harmony. Even enemies he once fought become case studies for growth, not tales of dominance. When younger fighters struggle, he doesn't scold them. He reminds them that he, too, once tripped over his own feet in front of legends and still found greatness within himself. His training sessions feel alive, filled with movement that reflects nature, emotion, and instinct. Students laugh, stumble, learn, and rise stronger because Po shows them that Kung Fu isn't perfection. It's connection. Connection to one's chi, to one's community, and to the world they vow to defend. What makes Po legendary in martial arts history is not just his victories, but his philosophy of empowerment. He stops the cycle of fear-based teaching and replaces it with encouragement that builds warriors who aren't haunted by failure. He doesn't erase the traditions of the Jade Palace, he evolves them. He honors each past master by teaching their essence rather than only mimicking their form. His mastery of Qi becomes another tool he passes down with patience, not exclusivity. He doesn't guard knowledge as a secret reserved for the chosen. He spreads it to ensure peace lasts beyond his lifetime. Villagers, pandas, apprentices, and the Furious Five see Kung Fu's future in him, not as something limited to monks, tigers, cranes, or legends, but as something that lives in anyone who chooses courage and compassion. Po's evolution as a Kung Fu master also changes how the entire valley views power, legacy, and identity. Where once Kung Fu was a privilege reserved for the physically gifted, the disciplined, or the elite, Po proves that inner calling is stronger than bloodline or appearance. He builds a model where every student is treated as a future protector, not a background extra in someone else's story. Apprentices who once feared failing in front of the Furious Five now feel safe experimenting under Po's guidance, because he shows them that stumbling is part of mastering flow. His lessons aren't confined to dojos. Training might happen in a bamboo forest, during a festival, while sharing dumplings, or when comforting someone afraid of their own strength. That flexibility makes Kung Fu feel alive, not trapped in tradition. He teaches warriors to think not only with muscle memory, but with emotional awareness, how fear, joy, anger, or doubt shape their movements and chi. His combat philosophy evolves too. Po no longer relies solely on surprise or instinct. He blends strategy with empathy. He studies how each opponent moves, not to defeat them quickly, but to understand the imbalance that drives them. His ability to merge humor with deadliness becomes a legendary tactic that disarms aggression before it even turns to violence. New trainees witness how he flips enemies, not just physically but mentally, turning conflict into lessons. Even the Furious Five integrate his adaptive style into their own mastery. Tigress learns softness doesn't weaken strength. Crane learns confidence can lift more than wings. Monkey sees silliness as stealth. Viper embraces flexibility beyond form. And Mantis discovers precision through presence, not ego. In the Valley's archives and scrolls, masters are remembered for specific styles. Leopard style, monkey style, tiger style. But Po becomes the embodiment of something entirely new. Panda style. Students laugh when they first hear it. But over time, it becomes a revered form symbolizing individuality, unpredictability, and heart-centered combat. The legends say Panda style has no single stance because it lives in adaptation. Rolling, deflecting, hugging, bouncing, flipping, using environment, instinct, and chi in seamless harmony. What others once called clumsy improvisation is now studied as advanced fluid defense and emotional redirection. Even beyond the Jade Palace, distant villages adopt his teachings. His influence stretches across provinces, shaping mini-schools built not on fear of attack, but on readiness to protect peace. Young warriors repeat his quotes. Your enemy isn't always outside you. Kung Fu starts before the fight. And Qi listens when fear stops shouting. And balance isn't stillness, it's motion with meaning. Po unintentionally becomes the philosopher master he once thought only Oogway could be. Not because he chased wisdom, but because he lived through chaos with humility. His leadership in Kung Fu also prepares the valley for a future where he may not always be on the front lines. Instead of creating dependence on a single dragon warrior, he builds a generation of dragon warriors in spirit, each discovering their strength without losing kindness. He encourages them to find their own symbolism, just as he embraced dumplings, scrolls, pandas, and chai. His final evolution ensures that Kung Fu is no longer a mountain only the chosen can climb. It becomes a path many can walk, run, stumble, and master in their own rhythm. Po's influence on Kung Fu spreads even further when he starts blending heritage with innovation, proving that evolution doesn't erase tradition, it strengthens it. He preserves the teachings of Master Oogway and Shifu, not by freezing them in the past, but by expanding them to meet the needs of new warriors and new threats. His understanding of Qi becomes a breakthrough in martial philosophy. Instead of treating it as a mystical force only a few can wield, he breaks it down through relatable guidance, helping students connect Chai to memory, breath, intention, and self-worth. He shows them that Qi is not an external gift, but an internal echo of who they are. In group training, he uses movement not just for technique drills, but for team awareness, teaching unity through synchronized flow, shared energy exercises, and even playful sparring matches that test trust more than strength. His training environments reflect his beliefs. One day, the students might be practicing balance on river stones, another day fighting with blindfolds to sharpen instinct, and another day discussing past villains to understand the roots of darkness. Po recognizes that a warrior who can only punch is incomplete. A true guardian has to understand people, history, and themselves. He also refuses to let titles define a fighter's worth. He'll pair a beginner panda cub with an experienced fox, or let a shy rabbit lead a formation exercise, allowing everyone to surprise themselves. That freedom strips fear of failure from Kung Fu's culture. Where past masters pushed through scolding or perfectionism, Po leads with encouragement and reflection. He openly talks about the times he doubted himself, showing vulnerability, not as weakness, but as a mirror through which growth appears. In battle, his advanced form of Kung Fu incorporates defensive manipulation, using an opponent's weight, momentum, and emotion against them. His footwork is deceptively casual, his posture relaxed, yet his adaptability makes him ungraspable. Enemies expect force and receive fluidity. They lunge expecting resistance and fall into disorientation. His signature unpredictability becomes a case study for future fighters reading scrolls about dynamic Kung Fu. He trains others to find similar. Creativity, teaching a large ox to use, his size like shifting earth instead of brute charge, a swift fox to use misdirection and rhythm, a pig warrior to use center of gravity as both anchor and weapon. The diversity of students reflects Po's understanding that Kung Fu's strength lies in its variety, not its uniformity. Over time, legends arise not just about Po's victories, but about his teaching moments. Stories spread of how he turned a frightened student into a protector of their village by helping them unlock their unique move, or how he convinced a rival warrior clan to abandon conquest by inviting them to train rather than fight. His way of resolving conflict blends diplomacy and martial instinct. He sees fighting as the last expression of Kung Fu, not the first. His reputation moves from hero to peacemaker, from warrior to sage. Children who once wanted to imitate his kicks now dream of learning his balance of heart and courage. The Furious Five. Once the pinnacle of Kung Fu icons, now stand beside Po not as superiors or equals competing for glory, but as co-guardians of a changing legacy. Tigress becomes his second in command, not out of hierarchy, but shared trust. Viper becomes the emotional counselor for young trainees, while Crane assists with aerial and awareness training. Monkey embodies adaptability and spirit, and Mantis teaches precision and patience. Po doesn't overshadow them. He unites them into a council that shapes Kung Fu like never before. Together, they ensure the valley remains safe from threats that evolve as fast as Kung Fu itself. As Po's mastery reaches its peak, his relationship with the Valley of Peace transforms from protector to guardian of legacy. And that evolution reshapes Kung Fu at every level, from how it's practiced to how it's passed on. His dojo is no longer a sacred, exclusive space guarded by tradition, but a living hall of learning where warriors, farmers, children, and even former enemies can observe, participate, or seek guidance. He understands something no warrior before him truly embraced. Kung Fu doesn't survive by secrecy or hierarchy. It grows through sharing, storytelling, and adaptation. He encourages scroll keepers to record not only famous battles, but the emotional journeys behind them. He invites artists to paint new fighting styles inspired by unexpected animals like porcupines, rhinos, wolves, and pangolins, expanding the canon of Kung Fu stances and techniques. The once quiet training grounds echo with laughter, chants, and rhythmic exercises that unite generations and species under a shared purpose. Po also builds pathways to make every student feel that Kung Fu belongs to them, not just to the Jade Palace. He starts festivals where teams from different villages compete in friendly demonstration battles, showcasing diverse styles and surprising hybrid techniques. Instead of awarding trophies for dominance, recognition is given for creativity, collaboration, and problem-solving. There are stories of students who once struggled to throw a punch, learning to redirect chi into healing practices or defensive barriers instead of attacks. Po is the first master to put equal emphasis on spiritual Kung Fu, helping trainees use meditation not as stiffness, but as grounding. Even his teaching of reflex and agility comes with metaphor. When a student falls, he reminds them a dumpling doesn't lose its flavor if it drops. It just takes a different path to the mouth. His legacy also evolves through mentorship beyond combat drills. He creates something like a Kung Fu Council, where experienced warriors mentor groups, not individuals, preparing them to teach others one day. By doing so, he multiplies his influence and prevents dependence on a single savior. He encourages each group to craft their own identity. Some focus on nature-based movement, others on chi flow, others on defensive strategy or swift response teams. In one region, a student of Po develops river style, inspired by fish and currents, using minimal force with maximum motion. In another, a badger creates a burrowing evasion technique rooted in deception and earth sense. These branches reflect Po's belief that Kung Fu is alive and expansive, not a relic of old scrolls. Even the perception of legendary status shifts around him. Instead of sitting atop a pedestal like Oogway's statue, Po walks through town, helping rebuild broken carts, mediating disputes, or training a kid how to kick without losing balance. He treats every interaction as Kung Fu practice. Patience when elders argue, rhythm when playing with children, resilience when danger arises. His approach to leadership rejects isolation. It invites conversation. When new threats appear, bandit clans, rogue masters, or remnants of Kai's influence, Po leads with strategy and unity, not fear. He sends teams trained in his teachings instead of facing everything alone, showing the valley that trust is stronger than individual legend. His myth grows not because he seeks worship, but because even those he defeats speak of him with awe and confusion. A warrior who laughs in battle, forgives after victory, and offers training to the humbled. Some enemies return years later, not with revenge, but with gratitude and requests to learn. That cycle of transformation turns Kung Fu from a weaponized art into a philosophy of restoration and empowerment. As time passes, the Jade Palace becomes more than a monument. It evolves into the heart of Kung Fu, open to travelers, monks, orphans, retired fighters, and curious youths. Scrolls are no longer locked away. They are studied, adapted, and rewritten with new chapters honoring past, present, and future. Po ensures that even his own techniques are not preserved unchanged. He invites students to surpass him, to remix his methods, to surprise him the way he surprised his masters. When asked how he wants to be remembered, he famously says something like, "If they're still talking about me, I didn't teach them enough about themselves." His evolution closes the loop of his destiny. From accidental dragon warrior to chosen guardian of balance. From insecure student to empowering teacher. From symbol of hope to architect of a peaceful future. In this final role, he doesn't simply wield Kung Fu. He becomes its storyteller, strategist, and spiritual anchor. And through him, the valley learns the deepest truth. Kung Fu is not about the might of the warrior, but the legacy they leave in the hearts and hands of others. In the hearts and hands of others.